All right, good morning, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay? No? No? Welcome to the forum, June the 7th. We're very excited to have our presenters, Montrose County. We have two county commissioners, Sue Hansen and Keith Caddy are here. I will turn this up a little bit. I think it's gonna, what you guys have to remember is try not to let this happen because nobody will hear you. Try to keep it up here. My name is Phoebe Benziger. I'm one of the four that facilitates the forum along with Kathy Heavers, Judy Ann Files, and way over there, Barbara Bynum, because she has to scoot it out of here a little bit early. Always a reminder, and it might be worth your while, to go to the City of Montrose YouTube channel if you missed any of the presentations. I know there are some here that are here every week, and we thank you for that, but I can guarantee you, you've missed some really good presentations. I feel like the topics we've had and the speakers we've had, we have been knocking it out of the park. And so if you ever have that night you just think, boy, I would like to watch something somewhere, go to the City of Montrose YouTube channel. They have their own little forum.
And to make it really easy, that link is right on the bottom of every email you get Saturday morning. So if you look at the bottom of that, you don't have to find that YouTube channel. It says, click here to watch it. So that's the easiest way to find it.
Assuming you get your email. If you don't get an email and you get the information from the paper and you would like to get an email, we've got little cards up here if you want to take it home and sign up, or if you've got friends that you feel they're missing out and they would be interested in this type of presentation every Wednesday morning at 8 o'clock, then we would love for you to pass the word along. So I hate to say it because my husband said don't say that, but here I go. Once he says it, you know I am going to say it. Backed by popular demand. I mean, we've had the county present and give updates, we've had the city present and give updates, and they're always, to me, really fascinating. And when I said this week on the email that you got, do you want to be in the know? This is the best place to find out from our commissioners, when will the airport be done? What are the plans for the courthouse? And I'm definitely setting it up. So put them to task. And again, as always, we will have questions that, if you have questions that you want to ask, we ask you to wait until the very end of the program, and I'll bring you a microphone. That way everybody can hear your questions. They'll have a microphone, and also you'll be infamous and you'll be on our YouTube channel. So if you want to be discovered, ask them really hard questions. So our first presenter today is Sue Hansen. Of course, both of them I've already said are Montrose County commissioners. Both of these county commissioners, Keith Caddy and Sue Hansen, are in their second term. I'm not going to get political with this, but I think they've done a really good job. I've been here long enough to see historically what's happened, and it kind of makes me sad that both of you guys are going off. Sue actually is a very good friend of mine. We look a lot alike, but I won't get into that. She's got an impressive resume that I'm not going to read. She comes to the table well prepared. She's got a lot going on for her, but one thing that resonates with me is she's very giving to the community. She's served on numerous boards in Montrose, and she's also one of the 5 members of the Montrose Women's Giving Club that we founded in 2017. And let me just do a shameless plug, and have given over $300,000 to this community here in Montrose. If you want to know any more about that, you can let me know. Sorry, my 4 facilitators, I just had to put that in, my other 3. She is married to Kay. She's been married for 31 years? 37 years to Kay? Wow. Wait, those Sue. She has 2 stepchildren and 5 step-great-grandchildren that she adores. They call her Grammy or Granny. Nana, yeah. Keith Caddy, which I'm not coming back here, was born and raised in Montrose near a ranch, on a ranch near Kelowna. After graduating from Montrose High School, he worked in the construction field for 16 years on projects in the U.S. and overseas. His wife Tanya and their children decided to return to Colorado and raise their children in Montrose. He became a certified police officer in 1990 and worked up through the ranks to the position of commander at the Montrose Police Department. He holds a Bachelor of Business Administration degree in management from Mesa State, which is now CMU, and a master's in criminal justice with an emphasis in executive leadership from the University of Colorado. Keith is also a graduate from the FBI's National Academy and Northwestern University Traffic Institute School of Staff and Command. So no funny business in this today, you got it covered. Keith is going to retire at the end of his term, which ends in like a couple more years? Year and a half. His post-retirement plans are, the joke is, he's going to succeed at retirement, because I said, you know, there's a lot of people in this room who have retired and they've failed at retirement. But I'm trying, yeah, you're going to try. So, hold your questions till the end. I'm going to turn the microphone over to Sue, and then Keith will call, and we'll see you at the end. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Phoebe. Actually, Phoebe was the presentation, so thank you very much. We're all going to go now. A couple things that maybe you don't know about me. I actually have my background, because did you notice that Keith had a big long bio and she said I'm her friend? I come from a business background. I've started 2 businesses, small businesses, and I think that's really informed sort of my role on the commission. And I think it's important to note, because the commissioner, we rotate. We're termed out after 2 terms, and so that really is a really important thing for the community to be aware of, because I think that we've all seen in the past commissioners have come where they've had an agenda, and I can say that Roger, Keith, and I really have public service at heart. I mean, that is the most important thing. We don't have an agenda that we guide our decisions, and I think that's really important as we consider and think about the commissioners coming that are going to run for office in the next couple of years. So I say that just because I think what we've learned as commissioners in the county is that commissioners can disrupt the entire organization. And so when you don't have commissioners that are either on the same page or have the same value system, it can be really disruptive. And we have a number of staff people here. They will testify to that it can be very disruptive to staff people. So I want you to be really thoughtful when we start talking about who's going to run and why they're going to run, and ask the hard questions would be really good. So I think we'll go ahead and get started, since Phoebe took 30 minutes of our time. And, you might already know this, but we are very committed to ag, and this is an ag community. We derive a lot of our income revenue from ag, as does the state of Colorado. And for me in particular, it's really important that we protect the environment. I think a lot of new people have moved in here because of the ag open space. And in Denver, that would just be open space. It would be a park. Here, it's cornfields and onion fields and bean fields. And so the county has taken a pretty strong position about how we can help ag. We're always thinking about ways that we can even increase that support, so that we make sure that our producers are protected and that they can continue. And it's under increasing pressure. You heard from Felix a couple of meetings ago, where new people come in, they don't understand the dilution with the pesticides and the herbicides. We learned about the virus that he sprays on the cornfields are not toxic. They just are toxic if you're an earwig or cornworm or whatever they call it. But the point is that we need to educate folks on ag and what this community is about, or else our community will change, and it is changing. But we need to make sure that the values and the assets that we think are really important, that we preserve. So we've done a lot of marketing and advertising. You've probably seen signs around about producers. We've increased that presence. We think that's really important. Montrose County has always been a right to farm community, but we formalized that with a resolution last year that said, yes, this is a right to farm. That means that there's going to be sheep dust, there's going to be sheep on the road, there could be some cows on the road, and there's going to be dust, and there's going to be mud, and that's what you get when you move into an ag community. So as people move in from more urban areas, we need to make sure they understand that and that they value that. So we did pass that. We've also put our money behind some future farmer scholarships so that the FFA kids that are in those programs, that they can access scholarships, that we encourage that sort of business perspective. We'd like them to go into farming, and we'd like to make sure that they stay here or go to school and then to stay here. And connected with the cultivator in Olathe has that same philosophy. Let's grow our own right here. They know what the community is about. They know what our values are here. So we think that's important. We've always purchased the steers. You know, we do a steer in the West End. We do a steer in the East End at the fairs. Keith is normally our purchaser, but I got 2 last year, and I got to spend more. Katie and I are on where's Katie? Right here. Yeah, we're on a competition who can spend more on a steer. And then we donate all that money to the West End Food Bank and to this food bank here, Sharing Ministries. We have it all processed to hamburger. You probably already know that. That makes Katie really unhappy because the steaks actually go into hamburger too, which is kind of can cause a tear. But nonetheless, it feeds a lot of people, and we think that's important. We continue to think about how we can adjust policy so that we support ag. And one of the things that many of you have come to is our West Slope Water Summit, and the idea behind that is so that we can continue to educate people on water, irrigation, how it works here, because it doesn't work anywhere in Colorado. It doesn't work like it does in Montrose County. So that's an important factor in people understanding when they move here. Just because water goes across your yard doesn't mean you get to use that water. So that's a really tough thing to get across to people. We continually try to figure out how we can educate. To tag on to that, I want to give a shout out to Mike Berry, who's in the back. Mike stimulated the Water and Land Committee, and so he and I are co-chairs on that committee, and that's an ad hoc committee that gets together monthly to talk about policy on water. We talk about what's going on with land use, and we have conversations and educate each other on what's going on in different counties. We think that's important as well, and that will go on. The West Slope Water Summit this coming year is November 9th. Mark your calendars. We'll have another group of engaging speakers at that as well. Keith. Keith.
Good morning. Tough act to follow suit. It's a tough act to keep running fast enough to keep up with her, and that's for sure. Anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about the property taxes, and of course we got the pro in the back row over there, so I might be asking him some questions too. Promise of property tax relief, but threats table refunds. What that means is HH goes through, which will be on the ballot this year, and if Senate Bill 303, another Senate Bill 23303 goes through, then HH will be on the ballot. And what that means is it's sort of like a bait and switch. There's going to be a lowering in the property valuations from 6.7 or 6.75 to 6.7. And the other thing that's going to be a problem with that is the Tabor refunds that you would be receiving will go back to the state. But they put other things in there that will make it very appealing to you, especially if you're over age 65 and you use the Homestead Act, not the Homestead Act, but where they lower the taxes on individuals that are over 65 that owns their property for more than 10 years. They're going to change that to where you can sell that property and buy another property and keep that same reduction in taxes. Is that correct, Brad? So that's one thing they're going to try to do, but the problem is they're going to keep your Tabor refund, and the problem with that is you're not going to get it back, and it's going to go into a pot of money at the state, and then they're going to distribute it how they feel it needs to be distributed. Probably will go to schools. That's what they're looking at. Senate Bill 23108, that was no, that's fine. That bill is sponsored by a real good friend of Montrose County. Probably none of you in here know her. It's Rose McGleesey. She used to be a commissioner out of Grand Junction, and she's now a state representative. And what that allows, it allows taxing entities to reduce their mill levy on a yearly basis, temporarily reduce it. And if they do it, they can do it every year. So that way your tax bill can be a little lower than what they are right now, because I bet everybody in this room has had an increase in their tax assessments, if I'm not mistaken. Also, you can contest your tax assessments up until tomorrow. I think that the 8th of June is the last day that you can do that. Is that correct, Brad?
That's correct.
So I'm making work for Brad. Sorry, Brad.
Well, Keith, if you're gonna open that up, if you have well-supported documentation, then come in and appeal.
Okay, did you hear that? If you have well-supported documentation, you can come in and appeal. And that means if you haven't appraised, you probably's been appraised by an appraiser, something like that, or other documentation that would justify that change in your property evaluation. Okay.
Keith, do you want to mention the resolution this morning?
Yeah, here's the resolution.
And also on 303, we're supporting a lawsuit against Senate Bill 23-303. It was overextended. They overreached the one item on the bill. And what that means is it's a 46-page bill that's got a lot of things in it that doesn't directly relate to one specific item. And that's one thing the state constitution says, that the bill has to be single item. This bill has several items in it, so that we're supporting a lawsuit that was brought by El Paso, Advanced Colorado, El Paso County, basically.
All right, now you ready?
Sure. Okay, everybody's wondering about what's going on at the courthouse. Well, we had a big, we call it a saga with the USDA about how the money is supposed to be spent with the congressional direct pass-through money that was sent to us through Governor Hickenlooper's office, or excuse me, Senator Hickenlooper's office. And they didn't understand what they were supposed to do with that money, so they were trying to tie us up with all the stipulations that goes along with the loan from USDA. Well, that's not the case. We rejected the congressionally directed pass-through money to us because there was just too many feelers, and you know, it was horrible. You wouldn't believe all the different things we had to do to jump through the hoops. We could even change the door knob in the courthouse for 20 years without them having an okay to do it, so we decided to turn the money down. They came back and started talking to us, and they're looking at a way of passing the money through correctly where there isn't any strings attached to it, so we're still looking at the $7.75 million for the project. We're looking at a cost of the project of being about 14 to 20 million. So that, and I think it's going to be on the lower end of the numbers of what we're looking at. So the cost will be a much lower than what some of the people have thought it's going to be. And it'll be a great project. We sent out the RFPs here about 6 weeks ago. We had a walkthrough with the contractors, and they're supposed to get the bids back in by the 1st of July. So we're looking to get that started as soon as possible. Hopefully we'll have at least 2 bids on it, maybe 3 of legitimate companies to bid on the courthouse project. We got the clerk and recorder's facility. Has anybody been in the new clerk and recorder's building? So what do you think? I think it's a really well put together building. It's really good for people that are handicapped. Like my son, he had a hard time getting in and out of that building to go up and do different things because he's in a walker and a wheelchair most of the time, and it's even hard for me to climb those stairs on the front side of that building anyway. They're not set up right. But I think it's going to be a good facility for everybody in the community as the years go by. Jail expansion, we've got a project to expand the kitchen, the booking area, the laundry area in the jail. It used a facelift. It's about, what, 25 years old now, Gene?
Yes, 1997.
1997, yeah. So we're doing a jail expansion. We're also looking at a West End annex, which would include the jail. The West End Sheriff's Department is in an old hangar at the airport. It is not a very good place to have a jail, and the holding cell looks like a shark cage. So it's not a good thing. So we're in the preliminary design process with the West End Annex. We're going to put Health and Human Services that we have in the West End in that same building. And I guess that's about it.
Thank you, Keith. So a couple things about the capital projects, because when you start listing all these projects, it sounds like we're just spending all your money like crazy. The county, and we've talked about this before, the county is very conservative fiscally. So we've been putting money back into a capital improvement fund for years, because in anticipation of the courthouse. I think the courthouse first came under scrutiny to be remodeled in 2010. When I first came into office, I found a whole plan on how they were going to do it, but the commissioners at that time passed it on. So there's been a lot of kicking the can down the road with regard to facilities. Our South Campus, many of you have been in our South Campus. It is a ridiculous building. It's been added on. It was the old Colorado Youth Electrical Co-op building. So that has been pushed down the road, and you know, when in the summertime, the air doesn't work, the cooling doesn't work. Of course, I don't know a building where it does work. Could somebody figure out how to, when it's in the winter it should be warm, and when it's in the summer it should be cool. But nonetheless, just so you are aware that that's kind of how we plan. We plan 5 years out with our modeling so that we make sure that we're always within our budget. And of course, there's always some changes that occur, but we think that's really important in terms of how we can manage our money. We do have a design going on we're just in the conversation stages. We're in very different stages with all of these projects. They're not all going to happen next year. The courthouse is going to be first, and even if we don't get the congressionally directed funding, we're going to go ahead forward because we've saved money to get the courthouse done. If you look across the country, there's courthouses in disrepair in almost every county. It is, when I did some research on it, it was ridiculous, and there's never any money to fix them. So we're very appreciative of this congressionally directed funding, but we also feel like if we don't get that funding, we also have enough money to take care of this. What that congressionally directed funding will do is help us then fund some of these other things without having to dip into our savings and not taking on too much debt. So just wanted to say that as a backdrop to the capital projects issue. No? Wait.
Yeah, airport.
Is that right? Okay, airport. So, do you want to, Katie, do you want to jump in and talk about the airport a little bit? I mean, everybody's wondering. It looks like it's on time. It looks like it's on time. You know, there have been some things. When you have a project of 43 million round numbers, something always goes wrong. And I think the most notable, because when I drive by, I keep seeing that plywood on where the glass is supposed to be, Purdy glass. Well, evidently when the glass came in the first time, they had put the shading on the wrong side of the glass. So obviously we couldn't use that. And then the next debacle was they dropped an entire pallet load full of the glass and broke it. So then there was another issue. So, you know, when you put a timeline on, there's always unintended things that happen, and you have to sort of pivot. And the county we may be large, and we may be conservative, and we may be all the things that you think that we're not able to pivot, but we are. And we have an unbelievable director out at the airport that is keeping up. I think most of you who's been on tour? Yeah, pretty impressive. I mean, it's going to be beautiful, and it's going to be able to allow for a lot of people to comfortably fit in the terminal. As you know, and you've heard this before, and thanks to Barbara and the Flight Alliance, but we have more enplanements than any other airport on the Western Slope. It's been very busy. If any of you have flown in and out, it is crazy, and we really need this terminal expansion was really necessary. We've added 610 new parking spaces. So and you've probably seen that, we're paving the area right by Humdinger's, and then the north parking lot is pretty much complete at this point. The jet bridges are due here in December, and so that means, you know what that means? Like, we're a real airport now. and I have to say, I'm a little bit, you know, I'm nostalgic, because I remember when the airport smelled like cows. You flew in, and it was funny because if you lived here, you were like, oh, it smells like cows, and all the tourists were going, oh. I kind of like to just reminded you maybe we ought to have odor so that people will know this is an agricultural community, and we want it to stay an agricultural community. But anyway, the jet bridges are coming in. They're going to be super cool. They're not going to be enclosed. They're going to be actually clear, so that when you come off the jet bridges, you can see the mountains, and you'll be able to maximize that view. So for those of you who haven't had a tour, the upstairs has a beautiful view of the mountains, and it's just spectacular. So we're really proud of that. You can always go to flymontrose.com, see what's going on with the construction if you're flying out, just so you know kind of what to expect. All right, who's next? Oh.
That was a wolf call.
Pretty sick wolf. Anyway, we had a meeting with the director of the Northwest CPW last week, and he gave us an update of what's going on with the wolves introduction in Colorado. They're going to start well, there'll be 3 phases of the introduction. They'll start with the first phase. It'll be up in Route, Summit, and Eagle County, and they're going to put wolves in those 3 counties to start off with. They're going to try to put, they said 15 wolves in pairs, and I haven't figured out how to make pairs out of 15. Anyway, CPW math, so we're going to work it that way. But one of the problems they're running into, no other state will give them wolves. They've talked to Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, they're talking to Oregon now, but they can't find any states that will give them wolves to reintroduce. And per the law that was passed, they have to have the wolves on the ground at least by December of this year. So I think they're going to be talking to Canada, that was mentioned. So we are going to see wolves in the north central part of the state soon. And like I said, they're going to only have probably about 7 pair. They're going to start out pretty small. But then the next phase is going to be in the southwestern Colorado. And my question to him was, whereabouts in southwestern Colorado? And they didn't know yet. But if you look at the wilderness maps and see areas with least population, you can probably have a really good idea that where the wolves will probably be going to go. One thing they were concerned about is the transition from the reservations in southern Ute and Ute Mountain tribes, and wolves going down to that area because they do have the Mexican wolf coming up from the south that are in that part of the area, and the interaction between those 2 types of wolves. So I think they're going to probably keep them probably north of there from that interaction area. So Archuleta County, Montezuma, La Plata, you might not see wolves in the southern part of those counties. They might be in the Vallecito and some of those very, very remote areas. But that's what we got on wolves right now. Like it or not, they're coming, and CPW has been doing an amazing job of preparing for this. They've expanded the amount of money that they've got into the coffers for damage to livestock, and which is a good thing. And hopefully it'll work out for the state and the ranchers in those areas in the future. So, report on the roads and bridges. That's Rubidoux Canyon. We're losing a road up there right now, and we've had some complaints about that, but the problem is you can't fix a road that's got water tearing it up, and there's still pretty good flow through there. I came across there yesterday on 25 Mesa from our meeting that we had in the west end. And Rubidoux, it's down about a foot from what it was, but it's still running pretty good when I went across the bridge yesterday. But all in all, we've had pretty good luck with flooding in the county of Montrose. Some in the west end, a little here in the Montrose area, but one thing to saved us has been relatively cool. So the runoff isn't coming all at once, so it's been spread out a little, so it's made it a lot better for us. We're mag chlorating roads right now. We're doing a lot of overlays. I think we have about 20 miles of overlays we're going to do this year, a little over 20 miles of road. Then, of course, some chip sealing and just working on the gravel roads. I can't say enough about our road and bridge department and the road and bridge tax that you gave us back in 2007. That's made a complete difference in the roads in this county. So thank you so much.
I think it's my turn.
It's your turn.
Yeah, so one of the things that, well, a couple things. If when we have had a number of complaints, you guys are our eyes and ears. And so when I got a call from a gentleman up on Dry Creek, and it wasn't dry at all. And so I went up there in my high heels, which I think someone should be able to take a picture of. Like, I'm up there prancing around trying to look at a road, but he was absolutely right. I mean, it was a really serious problem. Keith Laube, our director of public works, had to come out, and they immediately got that fixed because the water was overtaking the culvert, which could have ended up in the same kind of situation that they had up in Paonia. So we're really trying to. So it really helps. You're not really. We call them report of concern, but we rely on everybody. We can't see everything. The road and bridge people are out doing their work, and so it's really helpful when you do that. If you go onto our website, the best way to report a concern is to go on the website. On the front page, there's a traffic cone, and the traffic cone will your email goes to 3 commissioners. It goes to the county manager, it goes to Keith, and it goes to our road and bridge supervisor, Brandon. So everybody knows. What used to happen was Kathy would email me, and then maybe I didn't respond fast enough, and then then it was Keith, and we're all giving everybody different answers. So this is a very consistent, really streamlined way to report a concern. So that would be the best way. Write that down, and then you can make sure that you get in touch and get your problem taken care of as soon as possible. On that note, we did close Carnation Road because the culvert there is unsafe. And so we've had people complaining about that, and they're running around the cones and things like that. When we deem something unsafe, guess what? It's unsafe, okay? So we really want people to make sure that we have professional road and bridge staff. They know what they're doing. And so when they say that it's not safe for you to drive on that, we actually mean that. So spread that to all your friends on Carnation Road, if you would. The plateau, for those of you that are ready to go over the top of the plateau, it's not ready yet. So this was taken, Katie, when was that? That was like last week? Last week. That was 15, the drifts were 15 feet. I just heard this morning, this just in, not official, but they're looking to try to get that road open as soon as possible. So, but if any of you were thinking about going up there today, I would advise against it. So, anyway, so you can kind of see, I mean, that's a lot of snow to move around. I mean, this is an unprecedented year, as we all know, and our road and bridge guys have been phenomenal trying to clear and get people through and do whatever they need to do to handle all this moisture. I want to talk a little bit about this because this requires your input. For communities are required to have a community wildfire protection plan. And so we actually took it a step further and did a CWP, we're calling it squared, because if you know, and those of you who are new, those of you who are old, you already know this, not old, no, if you've been around a while, our water comes from Taylor Park Reservoir and comes from other areas, but those areas are at risk for wildfire. And if those areas have a big bad wildfire like Troublesome or Grizzly Creek or something like that, it could really affect our water supply. So we want to make sure that our water plan, our CWPP actually covers even the watershed areas. So it's a easy to read. You can scan this code. That's also on the website, on the front page of the website. But it's open for public comment now, especially if you live in an area that's heavily forested or you have some areas of concern. Maybe your house is built right against the wild and urban interface. So we want to hear from you. We want to have input. So this will be something that will be a livable, workable plan. In the past, these wildfire plans have been, they do them, they pay a consultant to come in and do them, and then they sit on a shelf and nobody looks at them. This is meant to be a usable document so that we are aware of the areas, the hazards. Are there head gates that could be at risk? Are there areas that we need to kind of keep an eye on? So please contribute and put your input in there if you're so inclined. And what's next? It's like a surprise. Oh. I want to give you Keith and I went to the West End. Just want to give you a bit of a West End update. You know, the West End, we can't forget that we have part of our county 2 hours away. And so we met yesterday, we have a town hall. We've decided, we used to do board meetings in each of the remote communities. So we would do a board meeting in Mayer, we would do a board meeting in Olathe, and then we do a board meeting in the West End. Well, if you've ever been to our board meetings, they're boring, right? I mean, they're really boring. A lot of stuff's on the consent agenda. It's routine in nature, and we're doing, planning and that sort of thing. But we've already sort of reviewed all the information, so it's pretty pedestrian in terms of a meeting. So we've decided to change these board meetings to town halls. That way we can get input from the community, we can talk, they can tell us what they're upset about, and so we have a dialogue, which is much more useful than just having a meeting and adjourning and leaving. So the West End, as you know, has been, it's a struggling community. It still struggles, and that is what happens when you rely on one big company to support your community. And so that has really been impactful in the West End when Tri-State, and if you knew that nuclear power plant was there, it's no longer there, it's all completely gone. But that community is still reeling from that impact. They're building back now, they're starting with tourism, and it's quite energizing. There's a lot of people that have moved in from Moab, which is changing the nature of their town. Imagine it. How many of you have been to the West End? So the West End has been historically ag and, and the coal mine, and Tri-State has been the primary involvement, uranium. So it's got a deep history in natural resources and that sort of thing. So when you lose that, and maybe this is a cautionary tale for us planners or as leaders, that we look at what can happen in the future if you lose that. It would be a really good conversation to have had 20 years ago. What happens when we lose nuclear? What would we do? So they started out with tourism. They've got a lot of energy going on there. New businesses cropping up, and there's not one commercial space on Main Street in Natarito left. So it would bear a visit. It's a very different looking town, but they have a lot of challenges. Housing is a big challenge, because if you looked at some of their housing, it's been there a long time. It's in bad state of repair. Really needs some help. They have healthcare needs on the West End. So Keith and I, we spent a couple of hours hanging out with the West Enders and just saying, what's going on? What do you need? And we put a lot of our taxpayer money into the West End. It's a very small community, and so we're always conflicted with how much do you give to a community with only 1,300 residents. But it's going to end up dying if we don't do something. And so we've invested in the Basin Clinic. We gave them $500,000 to each little town for their water infrastructure, because water is an issue too. You can't grow unless you have a good water infrastructure. So next year, Natarito's looking at a new wastewater treatment, a sewer plant. So that will help them be able to grow. So I want to do that, because oftentimes we leave them out of the discussion. They need to be in the discussion, and in the past, we've always had a commissioner that used to come. In years past, had a commissioner from the West End that would be on the Board of County Commissioners. It's kind of difficult to make those meetings and drive 2 hours. So we're putting more energy and thought into how do we help them. Started a group called the West End Solutions Group, and we're getting together monthly to talk about what can we do. It's a very resourceful town. They have grit. And those citizens come together to identify problems, and I'm trying to stimulate them to not just identify the problems, but how can we all fix it together. It's not always just money that fixes problems, but finding out what else and what other resources are in that town. So just wanted to mention that, and I also wanted to mention that Keith's kind of modest about this, but each of us, we all serve on different boards and commissions, and I have a problem. I feel like I'm a 12-step program. I have a problem. I say yes to everything, which means that I am overloaded. But Keith really is devoted to the Public Lands Initiative. He's been on the Public Lands Committee through our lobbying group for both his terms, actively involved in that, and he's also attends the Western Region conferences through CCI. He's up to speed on all those. He's on Zoom calls all the time with regarding public lands. Since our community is 68% public lands, we have to be really cognizant of what is happening. So the most recent, they're doing over on the West End, the Dolores Conservation, NCA, National Conservation, what does it stand for? There's so many acronyms. Yeah, we're kind of blanking on that. Anyway, so they've turned that Dolores Valley into an NCA, which is a protected land designation. And so that's going on right now. None of that is in Montrose County. That is just, they've skirted around and they've done Delta or Mesa County, and what's the other county?
Well, the counties that are involved is Dolores, San Miguel, and Montezuma.
There you go. See, he's the expert about that. But I just want to point that out, because I don't think people realize how much, we just don't come to a board meeting once a month or twice a month and, go through the motions of approving and denying or whatever we're doing. There's more to this job than just that. So just wanted to let you know that. And I just wanted to give a shout out to our electeds, because we wouldn't be a full county if we didn't have dedicated elected officials. They round out our team, and so we feel really proud that we have the electeds that we do. The sheriff is awesome, so responsive to the community, he and his team. Rosemary, Brad, I know Brad is kind of under the gun right now, poor Brad. Being an assessor is not easy, and most of your property increases are due to your property is worth a lot more than it used to be. I mean, you remember you used to be able to buy a house here for a lot less. That's not the case anymore because of the market. People have discovered Montrose, they've discovered Colorado, and we can be sad about that, or we can be ready for how we're gonna grow. And I think that's what we need to be thinking about. Tressa is super responsive. When people were worried about the voting integrity, she jumped on it. She had tons of meetings. I mean, we can ask Nancy Ball, she was at most of those meetings, on assuring us that our votes and the voting integrity is intact, and that we can trust that the vote, what you vote for is what is reflected in the results. So we're proud of our entire team. We think we've got a great team of directors. We have people that are here for the right reasons, and we feel like that's really important to make sure that you are aware of and that you know. So, so now it's your turn. And look, I'm right on time. Great.
You are right.
Okay. Anyway, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to come and speak with you.
Yeah, and before we start the questions, one thing I was remiss, as I should have introduced Katie Jurgensen. You're the, what's your official title? Communications Director for the county. She's amazing. I mean, she did the PowerPoint. She's my point person whenever I say, no, could you tell Sue this for me? It gets done. I know they appreciate it.
You can't call me.
Yeah. Call your friends. Can't call you. All right, so I will bring the microphone. If you have a question, just raise your hand.
Thank you. Please tell us more about the Nuclear Airport. I don't think most of us even know Nuclear has an airport and what it's intended for.
Okay, good morning. We do have an airport on the west end. It is the Nuclear Hopkins Field. It actually gets quite a bit of general aviation traffic. We also have a fueling station down there. There are private hangars as well. In the past, it has been used pretty robustly when Tri-State was involved, but it does again get a lot of general aviation traffic. We've been fortunate to utilize our Nuclear Hopkins terminal. I'm going to use those quotes really loosely. It's a fantastic facility building. It has amenities for pilots should they come in. It was renovated in 2014, I think. During my time there, early 2014, 2015. We utilize it occasionally for public meetings. We've had town hall meetings there as well. But again, most primarily used for general aviation. And also, one of the things that came up yesterday is the fueling traffic. So we do get quite a bit of fueling traffic because, especially emergency services, it's easy in and out. It's usually not as congested as other airports, and they can easily get back on their way to their primary bases. Does that help? Perfect.
They also use it, I'm sorry, Keith, they also use it for...
If they, Nuclear does not have a hospital, right? The Nattery to the west end, so they've used it for transports too. Helicopters can land there, so it is useful for that, to get that needed medical care or transports to the west end.
And we're going to three-team it. Also, we've extended the runway over there, and it's over 5,000 feet long now, so they can land stoplight jets in there now. So that's a good thing. We're trying to sell it as an area for people that have money to live in Telluride, put a hangar on the field up there. And it's almost the same distance from Montrose to Telluride as it is from Nuclear to Telluride. So that's one thing we'd really like to see on that airport, is to get more people with their private jets to start landing over there. So that's why we did that runway extension, 3 years ago? Yeah. And it's also got a dirt runway there, so there's a dirt runway for the adventurous people, so. Yes?
Okay, so I was gonna ask about the courthouse remodel. So when it's done, what actually goes back in that building? And then the other question is, part of that, those stairs are very dangerous.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. I started working in the courthouse, or going to the courthouse back when Ruth was the, clerk and recorder's office. And the girls there that work there, Norma and all that, they always told me to be very careful on those stairs because they saw multiple people fall down them. So I just wondered if the stairs were part of if they were able to fix those so they wouldn't be so dangerous.
Yeah, that is part of the renovation, is the stairs. And the clerk and quarters in their new building. But Brad's office is going to be in there. Rosemary's office is going to be in there. county commissioners, and the attorneys will be in there. GIS will be in that building also. Oh, and Veteran Services, almost forgot, so.
Did I hear you say that Health and Human Services is moving out to the nuclear airport?
In the West End?
Yes.
No, that's what we're proposing, and it's not definitive yet, but that Human Services would be able to be in the new building that we build in the West End. You know where I'm talking?
Oh,
Right, the Human Services in the West End right now is in a modular trailer.
Yeah, I
It's like
know. It's
900
terrible.
years old, yes. So they would be part of the new buildings if that works out that way.
out by the airport?
Mhm. Yes,
Okay.
yes,
And it'll be handicap accessible and,
yes,
okay.
yes.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm working my way over to the other side.
So while she's talking about Health and Human Services, what about Montrose? I've heard rumors that they may build a new building out north by the court building.
It hasn't been, it's right now, it's in the design phase. We're talking to each of the departments to see, because if we do a north building on the Justice Center campus, it would be able to house all of Human Services, which is about 90 employees. And plus we'd be able to put finance, Human Services, and we would get rid of the building on the south campus. So that's part of the plan, but again, it comes down to budgeting, and it comes down to when we get the final numbers on the courthouse, that will inform whether that can be, we can afford that or not. But again, that south building it's not, you know, again, that can has been kicked down the road a number of times. That now its course building is so expensive, but we really need to get employees into it more. Like a normal office building, right? 'Cause, I mean, that building, there's been add-ons, and I mean, if you go in there, it's like a maze. You can't even find where you are. So it'll be great to have a real building for employees. So we're hoping that that's the case, but it'll depend on how the numbers come in for the courthouse and kind of other projects. So, thank you.
First, I want to know when you and Phoebe are going to have a comedy night.
Yeah.
I just want to know I'm going to be there for that. It'll be awesome. Well, looking at Mesa County a little bit, I've seen they become more aggressive with their junk and trash ordinance up there. And so I wanted to see where you all are, the progress where you're studying right now on that here in Montrose County.
We have a proposed ordinance that's in review right now with our legal department. And we've decided, you know, it's really funny how people love their junk. I don't know. I guess I like my junk too. Mine prettier junk. But yeah, we've gone through this. We've talked about it since I got on board. I think it's really important that we take pride in our community and think about how it looks. But we have some. Let me just say, the ordinance starts with a narrow scope. It's going to be residential only at this point, and then as we clean up those areas, we can expand the scope of that. But is there anything else? Yeah.
Yeah, it's in areas with 1 acre and under. We're not going to go after agriculture where they have granddad's old combine out in the backyard, something like that. We're not going after that right now. So we're looking at more of the residential areas. So your neighbors next across the streets from you can't have a bunch of junk cars. And also, that doesn't go along with rubbish. Rubbish is a whole different thing than that's a public health situation. And we've got that addressed through our public health department.
So you can review the junk ordinance, Kevin, if you're interested. We have a draft copy that you could look at. But again, we're taking a measured approach on that so that we think as people move in, and if you take the boundary from the city and you look at the residential areas that are surrounding that, it's a real logical place to start. So that's kind of how we're approaching that. And we're also looking at a noise ordinance, which turns out it's kind of hard, right? I mean, you know, how do you do that? So, we're a community that pretty much let anything happen in the past, and so we're trying to put sideboards on areas as new people really are bringing these things to our attention.
Once upon a time, and I don't remember how many years ago it was, there was talk of paving Highway 90 and making improvements. Is that still?
Okay, we had that question yesterday from the west end. We're probably going to increase the gravel on the other side, probably a half a mile this year. That's what we're looking at. But there's some areas on that road where that big slide is. If you drive 90 a lot, you know where the slide is. We're going to keep that section that's probably about 7 miles of primitive road that we don't have gravel on. We're probably going to keep it like that. I know Keith's done some research trying to find a new route past that slide area, but that's a big hill. And we'd have to go completely to the west and come completely around, and I don't know how many miles of that would change in our road's direction. But until we can address that slide area, it's not going to be paved. And right now, the slide is heaved on one side and it's dropped on the other side. So I don't know if you can even drive through there yet or not, probably not. I would not try it. So again, it's just a bad road. Woods are a bad place on that hillside.
Okay, who else has a question? This is when it's really clear to us that Jim Hogness is not here. Right? I mean, he's always good for a good 5-minute question, yeah. So somebody else have a question that they would like to ask? Put them on the spot?
We're not scared.
Yeah.
If there's no questions, I'm inviting everybody to our PLCC meeting if you want to have a snooze this morning.
Yeah, we heard that they were really boring.
They are. They are.
All right, so let's give them another round of applause.